Thank you for joining us for the Connecting to STEM Partners webinar. This is the third webinar that Click to Science has done as part of the STEM webinar series for the New York Network for Youth Success. We are recording the webinar today and we'll be sharing it with the Network for Youth Success to share on their webinar channel. My name is Melissa Fenton, and I am the Extension Educator for Click to Science. It looks like my webcam is frozen, but you can kind of see me. I look a little disheveled since my webcam is frozen, and I'm going to go ahead and stop that so that it stops eating up the bandwidth. But it's great to have you with us today. And I'd like to have my colleague Sandra Ferrix, who's also on the webinar, introduce herself.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm looking forward to our topic today. I think we have a great webinar to come up. My name is Sandra Ferrix. I'm a science education specialist at the University of Nebraska, and I look forward to joining you today.
Great. Thanks, Sandra. So if you've been following the webinar series, we previously facilitated webinars focused on informal STEM methods and developing a STEM identity in the youth you work with. Today we're going to focus on identifying and cultivating partnerships. We'll be using excerpts from a resource from Click to Science PD as part of this webinar. That resource, Building Relationships with STEM-Rich Partners, is available in the Files to Download pod. And as you'll notice, we're not following it word for word. I just kind of pulled general topics from this resource. But if you're interested in learning more, that resource can be downloaded for you to use. And today we're going to identify potential partners in the community, so STEM-rich local businesses, institutions, and industries, determine if you share a mission and vision and how that partner can support your program, and describe strategies to support quality STEM partnerships.
The first step is to gauge what areas of partnership you might be struggling with. This will kind of help us meet your needs. So we're going to pull up a chat pod titled Partnership Struggles, and what we'd like to hear from you are areas that are challenging or difficult for you in cultivating partnerships. Do you struggle with asking partners, identifying partners, cultivating that partnership? What's hard for you? I'll pause for a minute and let you type your ideas. Thank you for sharing your ideas, and if you have something else, feel free to type it in the chat. But I'm really excited to see that I think we're going to cover a lot of these topics as we go through the webinar today. So we'll hopefully give you some strategies that you can use to address some of these struggles and have you be more prepared at the end of the webinar to build partnerships.
So I'm glad that it was brought up that identifying partners can be something that we struggle with. And so this is part of the webinar where we'll cover just the identification of those partners. In order to cultivate STEM-rich partnerships, we need to identify the people who can help us achieve our goals in STEM. So in the chat pod titled Brainstorm Partners, I want you to identify all of the potential partners in your area. And so we think of STEM-rich partnerships as only places that focus on STEM, right? That it's an engineering firm or a university that has researchers. This is not the case. Many partners may not even be in a STEM field, but see the need for STEM programming because it helps support a quality workforce in the future. So think of any potential partner. If you have existing partnerships, please share those as well. And think locally about those businesses, STEM-rich institutions, or other community resources that you could or do partner with. So I'll give you a few minutes to type those in, and then we will share back out. This is an excellent list of potential partners. So I appreciate everyone contributing all of the different ideas. And they don't have to be specific, as many of these partners are going to exist in even the smallest communities. You know, not always. My home community doesn't have a chamber of commerce, but there are other communities in the area that have those that you could partner with. So this is a great list. We've got 4-H Cooperative Extension, local farms and businesses, faith-based organizations. We've got libraries, museums, zoos, other youth programs. So take a little time if you need to and scroll through that list. So You may have access to some of the STEM-rich institutions that were mentioned in this list, like colleges, parks, museums, and science centers that would be happy to engage youth. I like that Timothy mentioned libraries. I know in our small communities in Nebraska, most small communities have a library, and they are really interested in partnering with local youth organizations to engage youth in different types of programming. So even if they can't do the programming, they can provide space, or they can provide reading materials or other resources to help with that programming. So other youth-serving organizations can also be great partners, and Timothy's first mention was, 4-H Cooperative Extension, and Sandra and I both work for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Extension, so I'll talk about the possibility of an Extension 4-H partnership specifically. Every land-grant university in the United States is required to have Extension. This is the outreach arm of land-grant institutions and includes 4-H youth development and experts in local resources, industries, and subject matter areas represented at the university. So in New York, Cornell University in Ithaca is the land-grant institution, and they are famous for their amazing citizen science program, the Cornell Ornithology Lab. So Extension 4-H do operate differently in each state, but they're a great resource for connecting to STEM experts and community programming. So I'm glad that Timothy brought that up so I could make my land-grant mission sell on this webinar. So now that you've identified some partners, you need to be able to articulate how your program's mission and vision matches up with the partner that you are looking to collaborate with. So most after-school programs have the goal of positively influencing youth development. Your organization may have identified a specific mission or vision statement that you can use, or you may need to articulate what your mission is with program staff or program leaders. So some places have it clearly spelled out, like 4-H, and I'm going to use them as an example since I'm very familiar with their organization. They've articulated what they do and describes how they do it on their website so that they clearly have this is their mission vision, and they can use what they've articulated on their website to connect to partners. Also, if partners are looking to partner with them, they're very clear about what they stand for. And so this is easy to match with the vision of industry partners, other youth development organizations, and foundations because it's clearly spelled out. Some of us may not have as clearly spelled out mission and vision, and that's why it just takes a little time to think about that with your program staff or program leaders. If your after-school program provides a safe place for youth to grow, learn, and develop, that can be your mission statement, or that can be your goal that you communicate to partners. So once you've identified and described your mission and vision, you want to find what we call the mission match with your partner, and this is just essentially a matching of goals. So what are the partner's goals and what are your goals, and how do those match up together? Depending on your partner, this could be clearly articulated on their website, on a Facebook page, or on printed materials, but other partnerships may not be as clear, so you may have to do a little digging to find what their goals are and how those could match up with what your program goals are. So I have just a few questions that are a good place to start to identify how you and the partner's goals match. So think about, how is your partner's goal and your goal the same? How is it different? How can our shared goals benefit youth in our community? And how can our shared goals benefit the mission of our organizations? So most businesses or organizations want to support, their local community. So I think a good common ground is, if you're supporting the youth in your community, that's having benefits to the community, whether it's, lowering crime because you have a safe place for youth to go and they're not out who are maybe contributing to your community by doing some service learning projects. So you're beautifying your community because you pick up trash home and you visit elderly people and improve the quality of their life. So there are many different things that you can articulate about what your program does to benefit the community that you could share with some of these businesses. So I want to take a little time to practice how to do a mission match. And this is a lot of words, but there are two missions or descriptions of organizations on the screen. So at the top we have 4-H's mission statement, and then below that we have a description of Farm Bureau Financial Services. So I'm going to go ahead and read these, but you can read them as well. In 4-H, we believe in the power of young people. We see that every child has valuable strengths and real influence to improve the world around us. We are America's largest youth development organization, empowering nearly 6 million young people across the U.S. with the skills to lead for a lifetime. And this is Farm Bureau Financial Services. We are about more than insurance, more than products, more than the bricks and mortar that make up your buildings. We're about you, your family, your home, your future. Our story began in 1939 in Des Moines, Iowa, when the state Farm Bureau founded Iowa Farm Mutual Insurance Company to meet the unique liability insurance needs of farmers. As the company grew, services including auto insurance, home and property insurance, and life insurance were added. Today, our agents build relationships with people from all walks of life to help them protect what matters most and prepare for the future. We're 1,600 employees and 4,000 field associates strong, and when your life twists and turns, you can depend on your local Farm Bureau agent to be there for you, providing the knowledge and experience to make insurance simple. So this is obviously a local example of a business as well. But Sandra is going to pull up a chat pod titled Mission Match. And so we're going to cover up a little of that text, but hopefully you had time to read it, and then I said it out loud, so it should be in your brains. Hopefully not forever, because I'm sure you don't need the Farm Bureau history stuck in there. But I want you to take a little time to identify the ways that you can connect 4-H's mission to some goals that Farm Bureau Financial Services has based on the description of the company. So I'm going to mute my microphone and give you some time to think and type. But once again, identify the ways that you can connect 4-H's mission to the goals that Farm Bureau Financial Services has based on the description of the company that is provided. You did a fantastic job connecting these two mission statements in a webinar with very limited details in a short time span to do so. So I want to applaud you for making some great connections. I'm going to just do a brief review of these because they were so good. And I'm going to open up this chat pod so I can read those a little bit better. So I think a lot of people saw the connection to the future. You know, 4-H is preparing young people for the future, and Farm Bureau is looking to protect your future. And so I think there's a good connection there. Planning for success, no matter what comes about. Building positive relationships was listed as important to both organizations. And inclusiveness, so making sure that people from all walks of life and each child are served. Just like STEM is preparing students for real-world experiences, so is 4-H and the Farm Bureau, and so they are concerned with the future and providing life skills that youth can use in the real world. Developing that knowledge and experience. And if you want to get specific, if you're looking to fund a particular program, and it isn't related to STEM, but there is plenty of STEM involved in financial literacy, you know, you could connect that to Farm Bureau's mission as well. So excellent job, everyone, on doing the mission match and doing such a great job with that. So I think this was a valuable exercise because you can make connections that may not be obvious. So it took a little time in reading between the lines of what they said that their values were versus what 4-H's values were. But you were able to make a connection that could be sold to that organization. And sold maybe isn't the right word, but presented to them to say, hey, you care about this, we care about this. Let's look at partnering in whatever way you have in mind and see what we can do. So a lot of industries and organizations do have philanthropic interests outlined on websites, or they may have a specific foundation that's all they do is determine programs and different initiatives to give money to. But with different small businesses in your area, they probably don't. And so going through an exercise like this where you're just looking at what they do, what they value, and then what you do and what you value is really helpful for making that mission match going forward. So now that we've found a potential partner, thought about how you and your partner's goals match, we need to determine what we need from that partner. And so I know what everyone's thinking, and it's something that I'm thinking about too, is money. In the world of nonprofits and after-school providers, funding is scarce, and we needed to keep our programs running and improve their quality. But going into a partnership just asking for money may not be the best first step. That may turn off the partner depending on what their organization is like, or they may be the type of partner that that's what they like to do. They just like to write the check and be done with it. So just knowing your partner and knowing what the best way to approach that first ask is really important. And as Timothy pointed out, doing your homework to make sure that you're making that connection and that you know how that partner prefers to operate is good when you're going into this step. I sat in on a program quality session that Marianne Stimmer led, and she shared that you should start with a small ask, be appreciative, and then gradually work up to bigger asks as the partnership evolves. And so I definitely agree with this advice because a partnership is really a relationship. So you want to think about how your partner can support your program that's maybe outside of funding, and you can build up to that larger ask. So you want to enter in the relationship just like you would with anyone else. I don't walk up to someone who I just became friends with and ask them to be my best friend for the rest of my life. I ask them if they want to go have coffee, or if they want to get together to do something else together. So it's kind of it's a building of a relationship is how I view partnerships. We're going to watch a very short video that gives some examples of partnerships that do not involve funding. And so you'll hear the reasons that different partners have supported programming, and you'll also hear from a 4-H professional, since I'm all about 4-H today. And full disclosure, I just mentioned it that Sandra and I work for the university, we work for Extension, and we're also 4-H Youth Development employees, like that's the umbrella that we fall under. So that is why we use a lot of 4-H examples.
In this video, listen and look as community partners and out-of-school time professionals work together to identify common goals, provide support and resources, and engage youth.
STEM programming is something that 4-H has been involved with actually for decades. Every day I'm continually looking for new community partners. The Quad City Botanical Center, for example, is a great community partner who really has some great facilities and also some expertise.
So we're always looking for ways to connect with the community, to partner with other organizations. So if a teacher or a supervisor calls me and is like, all right, I want to bring a group of kids down here, I try really hard to make sure that they get the experience that they're looking for. So if there's a specific topic that they want to talk about, we'll create a program for them. And so it's really nice to be able to highlight science and STEM topics and make sure kids understand them and can get a hands-on experience.
We really depend heavily on those partners in industry who will volunteer and come in and work with the kids as real live engineers or real live chemists to really give kids an idea of what those careers and those potential career paths are all about.
My background is in urban and regional planning, so this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I feel like I can be a content expert. Other programs, I am not content expert, so I will try and find a local resource in the community to be that expert. We really want to see students engaged in meaningful STEM and to spark an interest in STEM, and I think a project like this where we can do a year-long program that really can create change and affect change, that's a great opportunity for the students to have some pride and some ownership in what they're doing, as well as inspiring students in STEM education, in STEM fields, and giving them exposure.
All right, so it looks like we had some people who could not hear the video but could see it. I just posted a link to the video in the chat pod, so if you want to watch it outside of the webinar, you can do that. But right now we are going to start to brainstorm some ideas for what partners can provide. So we were bringing up a chat pod titled Partner Contributions, and if you have some good examples of help you've received from partners, please share that as well. So just anything that partners have contributed to your program, please share that in the chat pod titled Partner Contributions that you see on your screen. So if you have other ideas, feel free to continue to share those in the Partner Contributions chat pod. But this is a really great list. So I've encountered many after-school professionals who've received donated supplies that help to make their STEM programming really innovative. And it doesn't necessarily have to be iPads or expensive technology, although Sandra shared an example of a bank donating their old laptops for a robotics program, which is awesome. I totally agree. That's a win-win for both partners, and what a cool way to support your local robotics program. But you know, the supplies that you receive from a partner or those partner contributions can be as simple as leftover cups, paper, and cardboard boxes, and then you can use those in the design challenge. So if there are factories in your area or manufacturers, you know, I know that they may have some leftover supplies or resources that they may not use, and they can deduct those on their taxes, so why not give them to their local after-school program? And if you have a local factory or manufacturing plant, would they let you bring youth on a field trip to see their factory to meet the engineers, programmers, and maintenance technicians? So visiting local businesses, visiting those STEM-rich institutions is great, and some of those STEM-rich industries and businesses will let you bring youth in, some won't, but many manufacturers will just give tours and participate in education to increase their workforce. So I appreciate you all sharing those examples of how you have received some contributions from your partners outside of just funding or donations.
Sorry, it's my turn, and I was typing in the chat box. We are to the point now of talking about actually making the ask, making that connection. So we've talked about identifying partners and doing your homework to learn about that partner and what their mission is and how you can match with their mission. Hopefully also as you're doing that research, you find who the best person to reach out to might be. It might be somebody in human resources. It might be somebody high up in the, like the CEO. Depends on the business, what's going to be the best match. But you're ready to go. You know who to talk to, and you know what you want to say. Now's the hardest part, to go into that meeting. You've done your research and you're prepared, but you also need to keep an open mind, because your partner may come up with other ideas than what you had in mind as you came into the meeting. So be prepared, know what you want to ask for, but also be willing to discuss different ideas to come up with a plan that benefits both organizations but may not be what you thought of when you first came into that meeting. So even if you don't come away from that first meeting with exactly what you wanted the partnership to look like, you've started that relationship, you've started the pathway to a partnership that will benefit the youth in your program, and you're going to continue to build that relationship over time.
Great segue, Sandra. And that brings us to a discussion about cultivating partnerships. So once you follow those initial steps of creating the partnership, and you've made the ask, and you've gotten maybe part of what you wanted, all of what you wanted, or you've come to an agreement that's really going to benefit both organizations, and you're going along and you're getting your supplies, or they're coming in and doing programming, the work is not done there. Partnerships take a lot of time and energy to support and cultivate. So I compared it earlier to a friendship. You don't ask a new friend to be your best friend right away. You ask them to start doing stuff together so that you can build that friendship. It's the same with a partnership. They do take a lot of time and energy to support and cultivate. And so in order to have a successful partnership that is not a one-off, you have to communicate with that partner. And I've outlined some steps to cultivating that quality partnership. So you want to communicate. You want to provide updates on how the partnership is going. If it isn't going well, if someone's not delivering on their end of the deal, you need to communicate that and be prepared with suggestions of how to improve it. Partners need to know what the problem is and what the solutions are. So it does take a lot of time to do that, but it just is being communicative with the partner to keep that relationship moving. So continue to build trust. If either partner doesn't deliver on what they promised, trust erodes and can doom that partnership. So follow through on what you've promised and follow up with partners to ensure they keep their commitments. So once again, it takes time, and it's one more thing that you have to worry about on your end, but it is really important to keeping that partnership going and building that relationship. And you also want to celebrate successes. So I don't want it to sound like it's all a laborious thing. Partners love to receive documentation that their partnerships were successful. So if you visited an industry partner, you could create a thank you card with the youth in your program and ask them to share specific things they learned. You could take photos of youth using the supplies a partner donated and share them on social media or send them to the partner. You can also share evaluation data that supports a successful partnership. So there are many ways that you can celebrate those successes. Beyond just these, I know the thank you card is a really common one, and sometimes you'll go to local businesses and you'll see those cards written up, and it's a way for the partners to display like, hey, we are helping our community, and this is what the youth said about that. And then you want to debrief. So once your agreed upon relationship is, coming to a close or almost over, you want to discuss what went well, what didn't, and the successes of the partnership. So that debrief session can help you make the next ask or turn into the next ask. And here's just an example of that. It was great to visit the manufacturing facility and to meet the packaging engineers. Youth were really excited about it, and we did the egg drop activity after our visit to talk about the role that packaging engineers play in developing products. And because youth were so excited by this experience, we'd like to do 2 weeks worth of programming focusing on manufacturing and packaging. Do you have some staff that could come in and teach some programming or work with our youth, or can you supply some supplies that real packaging engineers use to develop their packaging. So that's just an example of how, your debrief about what went well and celebrating your successes could turn into the next ask where you're continuing to deepen that partnership and garner more support for your program. So I want to give you a little time to share about your own successful partnerships. And I saw some questions were coming up in the chat pod, so while you're typing about your successful partnerships, I'll get to those questions. But Sandra is going to pull up a chat pod on the screen, and then we are going to ask you to share one successful partnership that you've cultivated and what you and the partner did to make it successful. So I just want you to share that with your peers on this webinar, because I may have glossed over any successful tips that you may have for your peers. So go ahead in the chat pod titled Successful Partnerships, share a successful partnership that you've cultivated and what you and the partner did to make it successful. So it looks like there's no one else typing about the successful partnerships. I appreciate everyone sharing those partnerships, and definitely a professional connection plus personal interest is a good way to build partnerships. Trying to find that person, that you may know or that has a similar role that you have in an organization is a great way to connect. So that's how I connected with Network for Youth Success, is I contacted Timothy because he's focused on STEM and said, hey, this is what we're doing. Would you like to partner on anything? And that's how this webinar series got started. So it's definitely finding the right people, and that was what Timothy's question was in the chat pod was, how do you find the right person in the organization to make the ask? So if you have any advice or ideas on that, go ahead and share those in the general chat pod, but I wanted to give my 2 cents on that. So a lot of times it can be the CEO or the CFO or the head of the local company. And when you're dealing with local organizations that are smaller, it might be good to just to go to the owner and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Is that something that you would be interested in? It can also be finding someone who has a similar focus in another organization. So like Timothy mentioned, partnering with the statewide STEM 4-H coordinator, well, that person is also focused on STEM and within the 4-H organization. Timothy's focused on STEM, and so connecting with that person makes a lot of sense. We've had partnerships in the past where, we tried to go to the head person, and they're so far removed from the day-to-day operations that they didn't really know if that was something that could work. So connecting with the person whose focus area is something similar to yours is another piece of advice I would give. And then if you have any personal connections to people, so maybe your sister's cousin's brother works at a company, and you can make that kind of personal introductory ask of like, hey, could you connect me to this person who's in HR or who's the head of their foundation giving or that type of thing, and get connected that way. So those are the pieces of advice that I have, and then Sandra shared having a parent who's connected to the partner is another great opportunity. So usually the person that you could connect with personally, you could ask them, hey, who's the best person that would be in charge of this? And sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, but they can at least get you in touch with someone that might be able to help you at that organization. So I think that is one of the most frustrating parts of developing partnerships, is finding the right person to make the ask, because we've all gone down that road where you've started talking to someone and then they're like, oh, never mind, I'm not the decision maker and I can't say yes or no to this, and that can be frustrating. So those are just some ideas. If you have others, feel free to share those in the chat pod. And now Sandra's going to pop on and talk to us a little bit about the resources that are in the web links pod.
Let me try one more time. Are you able to hear me? All right, thank you. I appreciate you letting me know that there was a problem, so I didn't just keep talking. So what I want to point out are the resources that are in the web links pod, and I encourage you, if you haven't already clicked on those, to click on them while I'm talking and see what is available there. Also, if you have resources that are useful, particularly things that might be local, share those in the chat pod too, so that the rest of the group can learn from them. And remember, this webinar is being recorded, so other people will be joining us later to learn from what you have to share. The first link we have is to National Girls Collaborative, and that's a great way to connect with resources and partners that are really focused on the mission of encouraging girls in STEM. And their goals are to maximize access to those resources and strengthen the capacity of programs to reach girls. So if that connects with your mission, that's a great resource to build with. And you can use that network to help create the tipping point to lead to gender equity in STEM. Another related resource is the Connectory, and that's a website that is designed to help after-school providers find volunteers and other organizations to collaborate with, and to help parents and families find after-school programs to increase access to STEM learning in after school. So that's a great resource to go to find partners. We also want to recommend that there's a lot of professional organizations and professional societies for scientists, for engineers, for mathematicians that do outreach in their local community and have resources specifically for youth or for after-school programs. So look for those organizations in your community. They're a great place to find content experts, to find volunteers, role models for the youth in your program. We also want to advocate for service learning projects. They're a great way to connect with your community and with community partners to make your programs really stand out and contribute to your community, and to help youth find real-world applications to their STEM learning and increase their interest in their STEM career. So we've got a link there to Sensor Eyes, the science education for new civic engagement and responsibilities. It's an informal science website, and they have links to other resources and articles that can help you get started in service learning. Funding opportunities are there, and supports for higher education, informal education products. So that's a great resource. There's also a Edutopia link to a blog about turning your community into a classroom through service learning. It's Edutopia, so it's really more a classroom focus, but I think you'll find that really helpful to think about how you can engage with your community, and it includes additional resources too for this theme of service learning. Also, another great way to connect with partners and build resources within your community is through citizen science projects. We already talked about the Cornell Ornithology Lab as being an expert in this area of citizen science, and there are great resources there that you can look at. But there's also a lot of other great citizen science projects to work on. NASA-related projects like tracking clouds, or local projects to document spring bloom, beetles, birds in your area, all very useful. Great partners to connect locally might be Audubon or an entomology society or a Master Gardener program that can really help you connect with those citizen science resources. The SciStarter website and the web links list a whole bunch of great citizen science projects that you might be interested in connecting with. And finally, there's a toolkit from After School Alliance that has lots of resources about building and maintaining community partnerships. There's information for establishing, sustaining, and evaluating the impact of your partnership. So we really recommend all of these resources as great ways to start if you're not sure what you want to do. And if you've got an idea, then you may want to go in a particular direction like service learning or citizen science to really help grow your program and build those connections. Again, if you have any other ideas, share those in the chat pod.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandra, for sharing all of those great resources. And once again, those are in the web links pod, so you just click on the link. There's a Browse To button that opens up, and then you click that, and it'll open up in a separate browser. So you can just go through and open up all those websites and save them for later. And you do have to scroll down to get to the Edutopia blog at the bottom there. I do want to toot Sandra's horn a little bit. She is featured on the Sensor ISC website. There's an article published that she was a co-author on, and it's, I can't remember the full title, but moving from the museum floor out to the community and talking about those service learning projects. So I would like to wrap up the webinar today, and just want to thank you for joining us to talk about connecting with STEM partners. We have a little time left for questions, so if you have any, please type them into the chat box. Once again, a recording of the webinar will be available through Network for You Success, their YouTube channel. A link was pasted into the chat pod, and we will be hosting our next webinar in the Click to Science series on May 16th, focusing on navigating some resources. So please just take this time to click on the web links and download the files in the Files to Download pod. And if you have any questions, once again, type those into the chat pod. We'll stay on for just a bit to give you a chance to click on all of those links. Thank you for joining us today and for sharing all of your great ideas.